Hello students, welcome to today's class. Today we are going to discuss about various research methodology in studying educational psychology. The main objectives of this lesson are to describe the introspection method, state the merits and demerits of introspection method. Then to describe the observation method, state the merits and demerits of observation method. Next is to explain the steps of experimental method and also to state the merits and demerits of experimental method. In this unit, we will describe the important methods of studying psychology of learning, that is educational psychology. All the methods to study psychology of learning are basically nothing but methods of general psychology. A brief review of development of these methods will be helpful for you to understand the importance of the subject in greater perspective. The first effort of conducting systematic experimental studies in psychology was started in the year 1879 in Germany with the establishment of first laboratory of psychology by the person called William Wundt. The next important method of collecting data was evolved with the development of psychoanalysis as an independent system of psychology by Sigmund Freud, who emphasized importance of unconscious in understanding behavior. In the second decade of 20th century, psychology developed as an objective science of behavior by efforts of Pavlov, Watson and Guthrie. Experimental and observation methods were developed to collect data to study behavior. Simultaneously, testing movement started with the introduction of statistics in psychology. Now let us understand what are the various methods of studying educational psychology. First is introspection method. At times when you experience an emotion like anger or fear, you begin to think of reasons of that state of mind of yours. You say, why I have been annoyed over this or that, why I have been afraid of such things. The analysis of your emotional state may take place simultaneously with the emotion, or it may be done after the emotional state is over. In whatever manner it is done, it gives you an understanding through rudimentary of your mind. This method of probing into your mental processes is the method of introspection used by psychologists in a much refined manner. Let us see in detail what do we mean by introspection along with its merits and also demerits. Introspection is a method of self-observation. The word introspection is made up of two Latin words, intro meaning within and spection meaning looking. Hence, it is a method wherein individual is looking within self. Angel considered it as looking inward. In introspection, the individual peeps into his own mental state and observes his own mental processes. Then Stout considers that to introspect is to attend to the working of one's own mind in a very systematic way. Introspection method is one of the oldest methods to collect data about the conscious experiences of the subject. It is a process of self-examination where one perceives, analyzes and reports one's own feelings. There are three clear stages in introspection. First one is during the observation of external object, the person begins to ponder over his own mental state. For example, while listening to music which is to him pleasant or unpleasant, he starts thinking about his own mental state. Then the second stage happens, the person begins to question the working of his own mind. He thinks and analyzes, why has he said such or such thing, why has he talked in a particular manner, and so on. Then in the third stage, he tries to frame the laws and conditions of the mental processes. He thinks in terms of improvement of his reasoning or the control of his emotional stages. This stage helps in the advancement of our scientific knowledge. Introspection method was widely used in the past. Its use in modern time is being questioned. It is considered unscientific and not in keeping with psychology, which has recently emerged out as a positive science. However, It is still being used by psychologists, and through its importance is being questioned, it is not totally discarded. Now let us understand what are the various merits of introspection method. It is the cheapest and the most economical method of studying behavior. We do not need any apparatus or laboratory for its use. Second advantage is this method can be used anytime and anywhere. You can introspect while walking, traveling, sitting on a bed and so on. Then it is also the easiest method and is readily available to the individual. The introspection data is first hand as the person himself examines his own activities. Then the next advantage is introspection has generated research which gradually led to the development of more objective method. Introspection method is still used in all experimental investigation. It is the only method with the help of which an individual can know his emotions and feelings. However, introspection method also has certain limitations. Now these limitations are, in introspection, one needs to observe or examine one's mental processes carefully in the form of thoughts, feelings and sensation. The state of one's mental processes is continuously changing. Therefore, when one concentrates on introspecting a particular phase of one's mental activity, that phase passes off. The next disadvantage is the data collected by introspection cannot be verified. An individual may not pass through the same mental state again. There is no independent way of checking the data. The next problem is the data collected by introspection lacks validity and reliability. It is impossible to acquire validity and exactness of self-observation of one's own mental processes. Then, the data collected by introspection is highly subjective. It has danger of being biased and influenced by preconceptions of the individual. In the introspection method, the observer and the observed are the same. Hence, there is ample scope for the individual to lie deliberately and hide the facts to mislead others. The another major disadvantage is introspection method cannot be applied to children, animal and people suffering from mental illness. Then, introspection is logically defective because one and the same person is the experimenter and observer. It is not possible for the same individual to act as an experimenter as well as an observer. Thus, introspection is logically defective. The next method which we are going to talk about is observation method. We observe so many things in nature. We also observe the action and behavior of others and form our own notions about these people. We look at other people, listen to their talks and try to infer what they mean. We try to infer the characteristics, motivations, feelings and intentions of others on the basis of these observations. So let us study about observation method employed by psychologists in detail. With the development of psychology as an objective science of learning behavior, the method of introspection was replaced by careful observation of human and animal behavior to collect data by research workers. In introspection, we can observe the mental process of ourselves only, but in observation, we observe the mental processes of others. Hence, observation is the most commonly used method for the study of human behavior. Now, what is the meaning of observation? Observation literally means looking outside oneself. Facts are collected by observing overt behavior of the individual in order to locate underlying problem and study developmental trends of different types. The overt behavior is the manifestation of covert conditions within the individual. The study of overt behavior gives indirect clues to the mental conditions of the individual. Observation means perceiving the behavior as it is. Observation deals with the overt behavior of people in appropriate situation. Observation has been defined as measurement without instruments. In the process of observation, the method of observation basically follows 4 steps. First is observation of behavior. This is the first step involved in the method of observation and is directly perceiving or observing the behavior of the individuals who are under the study. For example, if we want to observe the social behavior of children, we can observe it when they assemble and play. The second step is to recording the behavior observed. The observation should be carefully and immediately noted and recorded. Minimum time should be allowed to pass between happening and recording. It will make the observation more objective. Then the third stage is analysis and interpretation of behavior. When the notes of behavior observed are completed, they are analyzed objectively and scientifically in order to interpret the behavioral patterns. Then the fourth step and the final step is generalization. On the basis of analysis and interpretation of the data collected with the help of observation method, it is possible to make certain generalizations. Social development and behavior of children have been described by child psychologists on basis of the generalization based on analysis and interpretation of the data gathered through observations method. Then let us talk about the various types of observation. First is natural observation. In natural observation, we observe the specific behavioral characteristic of children in natural setting. Subjects do not become conscious of the fact that their behavior is being observed by someone. Then the next one is non-participant observation. Here the observer observes in such a position which is least disturbing to the subject under study. The specific behavior is observed in natural setting without subjects getting conscious that they are observed by someone. Non-participant observation permits the use of recording instruments. Then comes structure observation. Here the observer sets up a form and categories in terms of which he wishes to analyze the problem. The observer always keeps in view few things such as a frame of reference, time units and limits of an act. Then there is unstructured observation. This is also called as uncontrolled or free observation. It is mainly associated with participant observation in which the observer assumes the role of a member of the group which is to be observed. Here the individual is observed when he is in his class, playground or when he is moving about with his friend, and class follows without knowing that he is being observed. The main advantage of observation method is, firstly, being a record of actual behavior of the child, it is more reliable and objective than the introspection method. Then it is an excellent source of information about what actually happens in a classroom. Then the next advantage is it is study of an individual in a natural situation and is therefore more useful than the restricted study in a test situation. This method can be used with children of all ages. Younger the child, the easiest it is to observe him. This method has been found very useful with shy children. Then it can be used in every situation, physical activities, workshop and classroom situations also. It is also adaptable to both the individuals and the group settings. Although observation is regarded as an efficient method of psychological studies, it suffers from few drawbacks. Now, what are these drawbacks or limitations? Firstly, there is a great scope of personal prejudice and bias of the observer. The observer's interests, values can distort the method of observation. Then the second disadvantage is records may not be written with 100% accuracy as observations are recorded after the actions are observed. There is some kind of time lag. Then the third limitation is the observer may get only a small sample to study behavior. It is very difficult to observe everything that a student does or says. As far as possible, observation should be made from several events. Next problem is it reveals only the overt behavior that is expressed and not that is from within the child. Then it lacks replicability as each natural situation may occur only once. Then we talk about the next method, research method, which is experimentation method. We have studied introspection method and observation method used in educational psychology. But these methods lack scientific objectivity and validity. Experimental method is the most scientific and objective method of studying human behavior. It is a method which is responsible for assigning the status of science to psychology. Let us learn more about this experimentation method now. In the year 1879, William Wundt established the first psychological laboratory at Leipzig in Germany. Since then, experimental method in psychology has become popular. Experimental method consists of actions performed under prearranged or rigidly controlled conditions. Here, the emphasis is on experimentation. Experimentation is where the investigator controls the educative factors to which a group of children are subjected during the period of inquiry, and the investigation observes the resulting achievement. J.W. Best describes experimental research is the description and analysis of what will be or what will occur under careful controlled conditions. Now let us understand what are the basic concepts of experimental method. First one is, experiments are always conducted in the laboratory. Hence, the lab is very essential. Second, psychological experiments performed in this method essentially require two people, the experimenter or the group of experimenters who perform the experiment, and the other is the subject or subjects on whom the experiment is performed. The next key factor is, this method is the controlling of conditions of variable. The term variable means that which can be varied or changed. Experimentation method has various steps. The different steps which are to be followed in conducting a typical experiment are, firstly, raising a problem. In any experiment, the first step is to identify a problem. For example, it has been observed that students cheat in the examination. To stop this, it may recommend strict supervision. But it has also been seen that even when there is strict supervision, there is still cheating going on. Hence, there crops up the problem of cheating under strict supervision or relaxed supervision. This problem may lead to some kind of experiment where you are trying to see the effect of supervision on the cheating behavior of children. The second step is to formulate a hypothesis. The next step in experimental method is the formulation of hypothesis that strict supervision may lead to less copying in examination as compared to relaxed supervision. This hypothesis now has to be tested by the experiment. The third step is to making a distinction between independent and dependent variables. In the example which is just given, the cheating behavior of the students will be the dependent variable, while the nature of the supervision, whether it is strict or relaxed, will be the independent variable. It is because by changing the supervision, the cheating behavior is expected to change. In the present experiment, we manipulate the conditions of supervision in order to discover the ways in which they determine the dependent variable, that is the cheating behavior. We may observe the effect of supervision in experimental situation and also the effect of relaxed supervision under similar condition and with the same group of students. The fourth step is controlling the situational variable. The experiment will not give you valid results unless the situational variables are controlled. If the experiment is conducted with a different set of students who have been trained in a different manner of say having a different value system, then the results will be different in comparison to those who have been subjected to experiment earlier. Now, analysis of the results. Once the experiment is concluded, the results are to be analyzed. In our example, we may apply simple percentages to find out which type of supervision has a higher percentage of students copied. Many a times, we apply more sophisticated statistics to analyze the results. Then finally, verification of hypothesis. The last step in experimental method is the verification of hypothesis, which we have earlier framed. The result of the experiment exhibits whether the hypothesis is accepted or not accepted. We may find that strict supervision leads to less copying. In that case, we may conclude that hypothesis is accepted. If the results are otherwise, then our conclusion will be that hypothesis is not accepted. Now let us understand what are the various merits of experimentation method. Experimental method, being most precise and scientific, has certain advantages. First is, experimental method is the most systematic method of getting reliable data. Second, experimental method enables accurate observations due to controlled conditions. It allows us to establish cause-effect relationship between different phenomena. Then the results are obtained are valid and reliable. Then the next is, the findings of experimental method are verifiable by other experiments under identical conditions. Experimentation method also helps to protect from subjective opinions. Hence, it provides an objective information about the problem. Then, it provides adequate information about the problem. The next advantage is, in experimentation method, experiments are conducted under vigorously controlled conditions. The experimenter can control the application and withdrawal of independent variable. Experimental method increases one's knowledge or psychological facts in child psychology, social and abnormal psychology. It is rightly said that experimental method has made psychology a science. However, this method also has certain limitations. Experimental method suffers from various limitations. Experimental method is a costly and time-consuming method, as it requires a laboratory and apparatus to conduct it properly. Then, experiments are conducted in artificially determined pattern of behavior. In real life situation, things might be quite different. Then, it needs specialized knowledge, and therefore, every teacher cannot be expected to conduct the experiment. The scope is very limited. All problems of psychology cannot be studied by this method, as we cannot perform experiments for all the problems that may come up in the diverse subject matter of psychology. Then, accurate measurements in case of human beings are actually never possible. Then it is very difficult to always control the independent variable. Therefore, it is not possible to create desired conditions in the laboratory. It is also not possible to reach certainty in matters of social sciences, including educational psychology. Now let us summarize what we have learnt in today's lesson. After learning 3 methods of studying psychology of learning, we should understand which of the discussed methods is best among the 3 is a difficult question to be answered. All the methods have their strengths and weaknesses and possess some unique characteristics which make them highly specific for use in a particular situation. A wise psychologist should have a keen interest into the nature of his subjects as well as the conditions affecting his work and accordingly select a proper method or methods for the objectives. Study of behavior of his subject much depends upon the sincerity, honesty, ability and experience of the investigator, who should always try to keep himself as scientific and objective as possible and leave no stone unturned for overall analysis of the behavior of the subject or the nature of the phenomena under study.